closing in on the end of the month and the end of this series, but keeping it going with the 39th season in 2015, and that was Shuriken Sentai Ninninger. That's actually part of their ending dance. I wasn't trying to make it rain, I was doing, Shuriken. That was actually, out of all the ninja ones, that was the first one where I actually did a hand sign. Anyway, much like, we revisited the dinosaur theme for the third time, now we're revisiting the ninja theme. And this one was a lot of fun. And, I read a few articles about it, and by that I mean they referenced a few articles in some of the wikis I read about their approach to the season and why they did some things the way that they did, much like the previous ninja seasons. Like I've said, whenever Super Sentai gets to do something Japanese, they're in their home court and they get extra with it, and I feel like that still applies to this one too. Yeah, so I guess just getting into the things I liked and the things that threw me off. And this one kind of counts as both, but I think the overall design was really good. This is another collectible type of power. This one, they put it, they have the shuriken and they put it on their sword or their ichibanto, and they spin it. And it's kind of interesting because they use their weapon to morph, kind of like Kyoryuger, but the way to activate it is they spin it, kind of like in Shinkenger. And then the funny thing about that is, it just so happens that the Sixth Ranger, who are both gold, their morpher is different from everyone else's, and they're both based on food, with Ninninger technically being American, his is a cheeseburger, and then with Shinken Gold, his was supposed to be a sushi. I thought that was kind of funny. And then other design elements that I think I really liked were, it kind of tried to root itself in like traditional Japanese, not including Shinkenger, which is supposed to be samurai. The last ninja themed Super Sentai was Hurricaneger, and theirs was a pretty modern take, I think, because it was technically, they went up against space ninjas basically. But with Ninninger, they kind of tried to do what Shinkenger did and really try to bridge like traditional and like modern. And then some of the design elements I saw in that were the suits themselves. I thought were really modern, like their traditional ninja garb that they used when they weren't morphed look like a modern take on like the traditional martial arts clothing. Because if you look at Kaku Rangers, it was like the old, like kind of really baggy, but they were really covered up. They had a hood, they had like a headband, or they actually had like a helmet headpiece type of thing. They had the sword on their back, and they even had like little armor, like armor guards everywhere. Oh, and a mask. With Hurricaneger, it was actually pretty simple and modern. They have black pants, boots, and basically just like a utility jacket. The only thing that gives it away as a ninja is maybe the gloves, and they have a sword on their back. I don't think they even had a hood or mask. With Ninninger, no hood, no mask. They don't even have like a traditional sword on their back. They only have their ichibanto, which is more for the weapon and all that stuff. But the weird thing, and maybe it was just for simplicity, but the shoes that they use are like board sneakers. Like, it's very clearly board sneakers. And they have like the metal headbands, which are really thin, that you would see in Naruto. So that was like kind of a modern take. And that's not even talking about the suits that they use when they're morphed. I think those look really good. And the visor kind of taking the shape of a shuriken, and the uniform is kind of like two-toned in that it has like the sleeves, and then it even has a sash, and then that kind of shows like a separation. But then, something that they try to do when they incorporate the traditional is when they what? Oh, well, that's news. That's new to me. Oh, I can actually hear it now. Okay. They have access to a battleizer that can be shared between everyone, and it's supposed to look like, a castle, like a Japanese castle, because you can kind of see like the bricks and like the roofing and stuff like that, and then that's even more apparent in the mech. And while I'm bringing up the topic of the mechs, it was interesting. What I mean by that is, so on the chest area, it's like a humanoid, and it's controlling the rest of the robot. So the entire mech looks fine, but it's kind of weird having the mech exposed, showing that it's sitting down, controlling the mech. So that was a little weird. But when I read about a lot of their design influences and their design choices, it was still weird, but it was interesting, and I could appreciate it. Their approach to that design was, it goes down to the cockpit, and apparently the cockpit was inspired by, kind of like, during Japanese festivals and parades, they always have the float, and they have it on their shoulder, and they're carrying it down the street or whatever, and then the person or the mech on the chest is supposed to be, the person or spirit or representative that the float is like showcasing, I think, was the inspiration. And then even reading deeper into why they designed the mechs the way that they did was even more interesting, because it's a 5-piece mech. That's nothing new, but they wanted to combine a lot of aspects that they saw from older Super Sentai. So they wanted to like kind of combine different mech features from past Super Sentai and really incorporate it into this one. Okay, I'm gonna have to read these. The designer or the director, who had been designing these mechs for a long time, like really wanted to challenge herself. It takes a lot of inspiration from previous Super Sentai. I have the wiki up, I'm just going to read it because it's a lot, but I found it really interesting just to show how much like thought and design effort they really put into the season. Apparently from Oranger, it borrows like mode changes based on an interchangeable section. So the helmets, or this, it was the humanoid that I mentioned that was on the chest, or Otomonin. Time Ranger's mecha had 2 different modes. Actually, I had like 3 technically. So it says here, from Time Ranger, it borrowed main robot possessing 2 types of purpose-built combinations. It had Alpha for like close range sword attacks. It had Beta for long range gun-based attacks. In the case of Ninninger, the standard was on the ground sword-based attacks, and then the second form, which happens to be the blue form, was it can fly and has a longer range. So apparently from Hurricaneer, it borrowed the ninja theme and having the mecha hide in plain sight. Apparently from Operanger, it borrowed that, the helmet or the mask looks very similar to the helmets of the Operangers, and then the weapon was a drill, but that one is actually from the movie. Apparently from Module Ranger, it borrowed having a dragon combination not led by the red mecha. So from Gokaiger, it was the change of chest plate whenever a different mode is active. So that was the Otomonin thing that I mentioned before. Apparently from Tokyuger, it had the ability to combine with a Kamen Rider's vehicle. I haven't seen those crossovers, so I wouldn't know. They incorporated a multitude of themes for what makes up the mech, because you have a humanoid-like robot, which is supposed to represent Budo, or martial arts, I guess. Wikis aren't always that accurate, but it does help point out certain things that you might not know. And to be fair, the robot or the mech does look ninja-like enough, so there's that. The dog is supposed to represent like kawaii or cute. The truck and train are supposed to represent Japanese technology, while the dragon, which is actually the design of a European dragon, shows the influence on Japanese culture from abroad, according to this Wikipedia entry. Apparently they did that because they wanted it to be in line with tenets of cool Japan. I must have missed that the first time I read this thing. Anyway, this actually kind of still carries on even into the sound design, because it may not have had the same mixture of traditional and modern music that Shinkenger had, but there was a lot of detail into why they designed the sound the way that they did. So let's just say in this one, they aren't your conventional ninja, in that they're not as sneaky as usually when you think of ninjas. They really want to do something different with it. And even though the ninjas they're supposed to be sneaky, they're supposed to hide, but their tagline, the roll call that they shout is they're ninjas that don't hide, and I'll be getting to that a little bit more later. And that carries into the sound design because it's loud, it's bombastic, it's not what you normally think of when you think of ninjas, and it actually fits the theming of the season quite well. I'm actually kind of a fan of Star Ninja, or the Six. The thing about Star Ninja is he's supposed to be American. They kind of play on the trope of the cowboy. His power up, he basically gets like a poncho. I don't think poncho is the right word, but he gets, like when you see it, you know what it is. So he basically gets like a poncho you would see in the spaghetti western with like Clint Eastwood. It was interesting. It was weird. They try to put in moments where he speaks English or he'll speak Japanese, but they can tell that it's like a foreigner Japanese, or like his Japanese isn't the smoothest. Oh, and something interesting is that for the secondary mecha that they have, I think this is the first time that the Sixth Ranger is actually a major part of a mech, because every time before, the Sixth Ranger's mech has always been an add-on to the main mech, whether it's the first or the secondary. But this is the first time that of any of the mechs that have existed in Super Sentai, his mech is a major component. Like it can't be made without it. It'd be missing a major component and it can't fight. Another interesting thing that they do with this season is that everyone's related, but they're not all siblings. Only Red and White are siblings, and then Star Ninja technically doesn't count because he's a Sixth Ranger, and then the other three are cousins with Red and White. So yeah, that was something that was really interesting because I had never seen that done before, and that kind of brings me to a point of something that threw me off is like they could have done more with each of their parents, because they only show Blue's parent, the mom, for like one episode, and then although everyone is taught by Red and White's dad, you don't really see the mom, but I think she does make an appearance in one of the movies. So I felt like to an extent they could have tried to do more with the parents, like how come they weren't Ninningers, or how come, they didn't try to inherit the power or try to fight to become last ninja, which is why they're all going through the training to, I should have mentioned this before, they're all 5, technically 6 of them, are fighting to become the last ninja and trying to inherit that title and that power from their grandfather. So I'm kind of curious how come no one else tried. Because only Red tried. Or only Red and White's dad tried. And they actually show flashbacks of him, training to become the last ninja. How come no one else tried? So that part was a little weird. But in terms of their dynamic, it was interesting because they're all really close friends. Not quite as close as siblings, but they're all still family and they all have a history with each other. It was a little bit different, not major, but it was subtle and it was pretty interesting to see. And I kind of hope we get something like that again. I guess since I kind of mentioned how there were flashbacks of the dad training to become last ninja, his arc was actually really interesting because it ties in directly with the main villain. How would I describe this? So this is probably going to be a spoiler for it. So the dad was trying to be a last ninja and inherit the power from his father, or the current Ninninger's grandfather. But then, they picked up an additional student. But then, it was their grandfather who prevented the re-emergence of that villain. And, he's old, he's trying to pass on powers to the new generation and stuff like that. But it turns out that the new student they picked up is actually the son of the villain that was sent to the future, yada yada yada. And he actually ends up stealing Red and White's father's powers. So he can't do any ninjutsu. He can't, shoot wind or fire. He can't do anything. The only thing he can do is teach the next generation, which is why he is kind of serving as the teacher for the current Ninningers. It's actually that betrayal that led to Star Ninja's distance in the beginning, because for a long time the grandfather would not take another student that wasn't his family because of that occurrence. So in this series there exists a shuriken called the End Shuriken or Last Shuriken. I think it's End Shuriken, that can grant any wish and that kind of thing. The grandfather is in possession of it, and the villains throughout the entire season try to get it. And that's why the title of The Last Ninja is important, because they're the next caretaker of the shuriken. Towards the end you find out that he didn't use the End Shuriken, and he didn't make the wish on the End Shuriken, but he was using its power to keep him alive because he was getting old and he needed I think his time to find a successor had long been overdue, since he had to wait an additional generation to do it. So when they had their showdown with Kyuemon, the former student that betrayed their grandfather, that actually got kind of emotional. I'm not gonna lie. It was kind of one of those endings where, they're dying, they actually start to question their choices, and then right before they pass, they see someone who meant something to them, and in this case, it was the grandfather, because the grandfather actually tried to teach him, because he, even though he was really loyal in trying to revive or release his father, there wasn't a relationship there. He was just doing something because of family or tradition, despite trying to hurt the grandfather and trying to use him just to gain power. There was a relationship there, and when Kyuemon betrayed him, the grandfather was hurt. Kyuemon didn't really know that until his final moments, when the Rangers kind of surround him and like try to tell him that, to an extent, he kind of wanted him back as a student, which is why, with his, dying breaths or his last few moments, he sees his old teacher. So it was actually a pretty emotional ending. It's like, and I completely forgot about it. Like I thought it would hit me the first time. Like, oh, that's such a strong emotional ending. I almost completely forgot about it. And then when I came back around to watch it the second time, I was like, oh man, I forgot about that. That was a really emotional ending. Jeez, that was good. That was well done. Okay, so there was one other thing that kind of threw me off, and then I'll get into the episode. So, another metal hero, kind of similar to Gavon, makes an appearance in one of the episodes, and I didn't know who it was. So in Power Rangers, it's Sheriff Skyfire. So I would have been completely lost. Like, who is this? But apparently he was popular in like the 80s. His nickname was like the World Ninja or the Global Ninja, and it was a fun episode. It's kind of like it's fun that they had another teacher, kinda, and another guest teacher. But there's a lot of references that I would not have picked up if I didn't read the wiki about it. Like, apparently there was a scene they recreated, something about sliding through an office that was supposed to be familiar. They redid the opening a little bit to allude to Jiraiya. So a scene from the Jiraiya opening where he slides through an office is reenacted in this episode. They do like a quick 10-second rundown, and it shows like little screenshots from previous episodes of Jiraiya and like the monsters that he fought and stuff like that. But much like my Gavon experience in Go-Busters, where I watched his character, I didn't know who they were, but at least it was fun, it was entertaining, it was interesting. I just can't appreciate it as much as I could because I'm not familiar with the character. Oh, before that, interestingly, in the Jiraiya episode, a Power Ranger makes an appearance. Yes, an American Power Ranger. Well, an actor from Power Rangers makes an appearance, and that actor is Yoshi Darso, and he's playing a random citizen, being attacked by the monster of the week. It's actually in like the opening scene, and believe it or not, it's actually Aonin, or the blue ninja that helps him. And it's funny because in Power Rangers Ninja Steel, which is what they adapt a ninja into, he's played by his brother. So it was cute. I didn't think they were expecting it, but it would have been funny if they tried to reincorporate that scene into Power Rangers, but they didn't, as far as I remember. Probably because it would have been too confusing. It's like, oh, what's Kodo doing there? But they do give him an episode, kind of. So like I kind of mentioned before, Majiyello makes an appearance in the episode because the Blue Ninja is also a magician and uses magic. And he uses magic like throughout the season, and he's trying to mix using magic with ninjutsu. But then someone from his school comes in and disrupts his lifestyle, and he's trying to hide it. And it's actually like the headmaster's daughter, because she has a crush on him, and was kind of wondering where he's been, and goes to Japan to check up on him. And then it's actually Majiyello who comes back to pick her up. And witness, what his student has been up to and how his skills have improved and how he's been able to mix ninjutsu and magic. But I don't know why. Like, when they were planning out the seasons, where they're like, oh, let's make him a magician, and then like it was gonna lead up to like this like joke, or like it was gonna lead up to like this Easter egg, or were they running with it the whole time, and then they said, oh, you know what would be cool if a Maji Ranger made an appearance. Actually, maybe that is what they did. So the actor's pretty involved with the Super Sentai. He became like an ambassador in 2017. So I guess like they just really liked him and said, hey, you busy? Why don't you do a scene for us real quick? But yeah, when that happened, it was like, oh, on Yellow, what's he doing here? He's not even a ninja. But it was fun, and they do play an instrumental version of the Maji Ranger theme, so that brought back some memories from only a few months prior. Oh, and there was a scene where they actually kind of recreate the Maji Ranger roll call, so that was pretty fun too. Yeah, you even see him morphed briefly just to ride the broom to take them to England. I guess while I'm on the topic of previous Super Sentai and previous appearances, oh damn it, and there's at least one more previous Super Sentai who makes an appearance, other than the two that we'll get to in my favorite episode. But the last previous Ranger who makes an appearance is Shurikenger from Hurricaneger, who I thought died. According to the wiki, it's somewhat addressed in the movie that he either survived the attack, or what I thought happened, or what I thought I read was, it might have been in the 10-year special, but a student that Hurricane Red was teaching eventually took up the mantle of Shurikenger, but I actually don't know anymore. So, it'll give me something to look forward to when I watch those movies and specials and stuff. So the first time around when I saw him, I was like, oh, Shurikenger, okay, another ninja, cool. But then after watching Hurricaneger and then eventually watching Ninninger again, I'm like, I thought he died. What does this mean? Did I miss something? So I guess, with movies being canon, it gives me another reason to watch the movies, other than just for a good time. While I'm on the topic of previous Super Sentai, you can't talk about this season without talking about the big ninja crossover episode that happens in the season, which also happens to be my favorite episode, or Shinobi 7 Spring Ninja Festival. So when I first watched this episode, it was a lot of fun. The second time I watched this episode, because at that point I had actually watched Kaku Ranger and got to know who Ninja Red was, and then watched Hurricaneger and knew who Hurricane Red was, it made it that much more enjoyable. But the thing that made it even more enjoyable, and the thing I admired about it the most, was I think it actually came when I was watching Gokaiger. But to give some context, let me give a brief description of what happens in the episode. The first time I watched it was really fun because even though I didn't really know who they were, they made the episode really solid in that it was deep, it was fun to watch, and the episode, even if you never go back and watch Hurricaneger and Kaku Ranger and understand who they are, it's just fun because I guess much like when I watched the episode with Jiraiya or Gavan and Go Buster, and I just kind of took it as just kind of as another character, not trying to think too much about how deep that character's history is, and just kind of enjoying it for what it is. It was a pretty good episode because there's a time travel involved, there's bonds involved. There's shenanigans, and let me give you a brief idea of what happens. So in this episode, actually at the end of the previous episode, Ninja Red and Hurricane Red like come out from the shadows, and to show that in the next episode they're going to be their teachers for the day. They're guest teachers, and they're going to teach them their respective techniques. So for Kaku Ranger, it was to do the the shadow clone jutsu. I think that term is actually Naruto, but you know what I mean. So Ninja Red, Sasuke tries to teach them the clone technique, and then Hurricane Red tries to teach them the skywalk technique, where he's floating through the sky or floating through the air. And then they test the ninjas, and everyone passes except for Aka Ninja, or Red, or Takaharu, because Takaharu is a hothead. Although he is a good ninja in that he performs well, he's kind of the hothead. He even says himself, he performs better when he is fighting for real. He can't do it in practice or in studying. And then the monster of the week comes in. They gotta stop it, but Ninja Red and Hurricane Red feel that he is not ready, so they actually tie him up. So fighting ensues. Red, of course, Takaharu, of course, manages to escape, and but the villain opens a portal and goes through the portal, and then so does Takaharu. Ninja Red and Hurricane Red have a moment together. It's like, oh, we couldn't save him. It's like, what does it mean? It turns out that portal was actually to travel back in time, because it's looking for the end shuriken, which I think at this point is the first time it's mentioned, and pretty much provides direction for the end of the season. And they're kind of talking about 10 years ago we kept fighting this exact same monster and kept asking for an end shuriken. We didn't know what it was, and then a red ninja no one knew came out of nowhere. That red ninja being Takaharu, the monster of the week, goes to the portal, but then unleashes one final attack, but then Takaharu blocks it with his body, and then he was presumed dead. So that's why 10 years later they were trying to teach them skills that they could use to prevent that from happening. That's why he didn't feel like he was ready. That's why they failed him. But it's kind of one of those things that trying to stop it is only going to make it happen. So the monster comes back, but then so does Takaharu, because plot twist, he was able to actually perform the clone technique, and it was actually even enough to impress his teachers. And then fighting ensues, typical. Last couple minutes of the Super Sentai episode, summon the Big Mac, and then their grandfather is having a moment with Hurricane Red and Ninja Red, telling them to please continue watching over my grandchildren. They're still growing, they're still not ready. Then out of nowhere, for some reason, Go Ranger, or the Red Go Ranger, the very first Super Sentai Red Ranger, shows up and says, of course we're going to continue to watch over the next generations of Sentai. We've done it before. And then they all kind of have a joking moment, saying Hurricane Red and Ninja Red weren't too far off from this current Red, which is actually pretty true. They were all kind of hot-headed. They all kind of did things their way. They were all green, not color green, but green being fresh, immature, inexperienced rookies. So the first time I saw it, I was like, wow, that was a really good episode. And it gave me something to look forward to when I would watch Kaku Ranger and Hurricane Ranger. But then the second time was coming around, I was like, man, I can't wait to watch that episode again. But I was still confused by the appearance of Go Ranger. until I think I watched the Gokaiger, and then, well, for the second time, and I was trying to think of like all the lessons that each tribute episode had and how that related to their respective seasons. And then here's what I found out. Here's how I made sense of everything. For starters, I probably should have mentioned this in the beginning, but this episode was supposed to premiere on April 5th, 2015. 40 years to the day that Go Ranger first premiered. Unfortunately, there was a week delay in Tokyo, so that pushed this episode to April 12th. So it actually premiered on the premiere of the second episode of Go Ranger, but that's okay. So then at first I was like, oh, okay, so that's probably why, 40th anniversary, even though it's a 39th anniversary season. I was like, oh, okay, that's probably why they had Go Ranger there. But then I think when I was putting my notes together to figure out, what each season represented in Gokaiger, or I think I figured it out, I think. And as far as I know, I haven't seen it anywhere in the wiki, and I haven't come across an article that discusses it. So, and I'm pretty sure it's not anything new. This is just something that I kind of put together, and it's this. So this episode was fun, and it happens to be like a big ninja crossover episode. Kind of not unlike the big dinosaur crossover movie that happens for Kyoryuger. And on the surface, that's kind of what it is. And then you dig a little bit deeper. You find out that it's the 40th anniversary, so that's why Go Ranger makes an appearance. But then, as a maniac who actually watched through Hurricaneger and Kakuranger and, coming back to Ninninger and everything in between, completely changed how I look at this episode. Because what I gathered from each season, other than the fact that they are all ninja themed, is that they all kind of cover the theme of doing something differently. And I think I kind of briefly brought it up when I was going over Gokaiger, and how each season or each tribute episode about a season had its respective lessons. In terms of doing something different, in Kakuranger, they have the ninja quest, and they had to go further and beyond what their ancestors had to do, and connect with the god shoguns that them and their ancestors were serving, and that was the ninja quest, and that's how they were doing something differently. With Hurricaneger, they brought the school feuds to an end. They combined with the schools, and the secret of the Gozen-sama, and was brought to an end, and that's how they did it differently, by bringing that tradition to an end. And Ninninger does the same thing by bringing the tradition of the last ninja to an end. So Ninninger does the same thing, not only by being ninja who don't hide, but by actually ending the tradition set forth by their ancestors, their grandfather and his father, and so on and so forth. Because towards the end, when they're in their final test to become last ninja, part of the test is that they had to kill their grandfather, the previous last ninja, and he had to do the same to his father. But they can't do it, not because they're weak, but because things are different. And eventually they conclude that they can all become their own kind of last ninja. For instance, the pink ninja wants to be like an engineer, last ninja. The blue wants to be a magician, last ninja. The star ninja gold wants to be a global last ninja because he's from America. It was that idea of doing something differently is what I feel like deeply connects all of the seasons other than just being ninja themed. So then when that happened, when I put that together, I'm like, oh my god. Not only was it super deep, but I interpreted it as an allegory for the Super Sentai series as a whole. They're basically saying to fans, new and old, that Super Sentai has been around for a long time, and it's going to continue being around for a long time. And things are going to change. Things change. Times change. You can kind of apply this to, life and growing up in general. But when I finally put it together, I was like, this is a loaded episode. They could not have made any better of a love letter episode than this. And it's funny I say that because, I've seen debate as to whether or not, Power Rangers should have adapted this ninja episode because, well, for one thing, I don't think they could because they acknowledged the Kaku Ranger season as Alien Rangers, so they would have been weird to randomly bring back the Alien Rangers and then combine it with the previous ninja season and then the current ninja season at the time. Although, to be fair, that was an anniversary year, and they did have that special episode, which I really enjoyed, and I think actually pulls footage from the summer movie because the villain is from that summer movie. So, to be fair, they managed to do their own thing, but this episode would have been a hard one to top because it is loaded, and to me, that was just like a love letter message to like Super Sentai fans everywhere. It was deep. I wonder if anyone else picked up on it, or if I'm just, romanticizing everything. Another reason why I came to enjoy and understand and respect Super Sentai so much, with it being the 39th season, but the 40th anniversary, we're kind of back on that, major anniversary year where the upcoming Super Sentai season is going to be the 45th year, but the 44th season. So I wonder if they're going to have anything like that.